You are listening to an exclusive interview on Bass Musician Magazine. The interview starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, how y'all doing, y'all? Today, we have a very special treat for you. We are here with he who hails from Cincinnati's bowels of funkaliciousness, the man they call FREEKBASS. Bro, I want to thank you so much for being here with me today, and we are all looking forward to see what is inside the mind of Mr. FREEKBASS himself. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited about this today, Momo. Thanks for having me.
I love the way you dress. I love the way you think. You're one of the few guys I've seen who is aesthetically conscious. Let's talk about the beginning. What happened with a little mini FREEKBASS when you started off in the early days, and how did this all begin for you, bro?
I actually started off as a drummer. Whenever I heard music as a kid, that was the first thing I wanted to do. I wanted to play drums. I always think of myself as a drummer that can play notes. Growing up in Cincinnati, there's always been this huge funk scene going all the way back to the days of King Records with James Brown. In the 70s, you had, Bootsy Collins. 80s, Midnight Star. Right up the road, there was the Ohio Players. Started getting in and playing a little bit of guitar after that. I play a lot of guitar still, but even now, it always kind of felt like I always feel like I'm gonna break. If I play guitar too hard, I'm gonna break it. I was always drawn to not only the tones out of it, just like the meatiness and the thickness of the bass. In 6th or 7th grade, I had a math book, and it had like all these different guitar, like acoustic guitar and all that stuff, and it had the bass kind of sitting there in the middle, and I just loved how chunky it looked, and it just looked. And then when I started hearing the sounds that came out of it too, it drew me in. When I got a little bit older, I started getting into, all the Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and all the hip hop stuff, was obviously was a byproduct of the funk too as well. Not to sound like too crazy, but it felt like it was calling to me, and that's kind of where I'm at today. It still is calling to me.
It's quite amazing, because everything that you just mentioned is, I can really see the individual threads of your influences and where you were able to hybrid it and turn it into your own thing. I was telling somebody the other day, at one point, you get influenced by people when you're young, and then if you're lucky, you'll understand how to not sound like them and become yourself and inspire yourself from yourself.
Well, sure.
I'm feeling so good.
Staying on that train that you're on right now, with all those, as much as I was into like the funk and all that kind of stuff, I was also into, Bowie, Daft Punk, and a lot of electronic dance music too as well. And DJ culture, I was fascinated by that. As much as I was playing my bass, I was touring with my MPC 2000 Akai drum machine and sampler at the same time. So I was kind of getting both those worlds kind of simultaneously at the same time, which also helped influence kind of the way I ended up playing bass. I was involved in that era where samples are going to be the big thing, and so I would sit there and play along with those records. I mean, I must have played Doggy Style record a million times. I can play that album in my sleep by Snoop Dogg, and it's just because those bass lines are so hypnotic, I
think a lot of that's got to do with listening to such a wide hybrid of stuff so that you can put that live feeling into the tight feeling as well and create that amazing hybrid. And of course, you mix it up with all your clothes, your look, and your playability, which is fucking killer, bro.
Thank you so much for those words. And yeah, and feel and pocket is everything. When you're talking about someone like, say, Jocko, everybody always, a lot of times, they get caught up in how fast he plays or how many notes he's playing, all that kind of stuff. To me, what drew me into Jocko was his pocket. You can go to the NAMM show and see 1,000 guys that can play fast, and that's really cool for about 30 seconds. But to be able to play that with pocket, that's what made him so fascinating to me.
Bro, I'm starting to wonder whether my mother had a kid that she didn't tell me about or something.
I'm going to ask your mom out on a date.
You have some really unique instruments. There came a point where the fusion of the way you look and the instruments you choose are a little bit different, and you got this 4-string Stonefield and a Stonefield double neck that you got. Tell us a little bit about that.
Tom, who's the head of Stonefield, I met him over, I was doing the London-based guitar show over in the UK. And the thing that's so unique, what grabbed me about his basses was this right here, this floating bridge. It's like what you see on cellos and upright basses, and I'm like, wow, that's so unique looking. And I kept walking past his booth, and I come back a few minutes later, and finally he came up to me and he's like, yo, FREEKBASS, you gonna come over and play one of these things over here or what? They played great. I love the way they feel. The way they sounded was amazing. Especially it really fit with my kind of style of playing. Over through the course of the weekend, we talked for a little bit, and he's like, well, we should do something together. I'd love to see if you'd like to be an endorser. And as we continue to talk, he's like, why don't we just go ahead and, make you a FREEKBASS signature model, which is what I have here in my hand right now. One of the things we added to is this thing, I don't know if you can see it here, but it's we call it a funk plate. And because of the floating bridge, like the strings sit a little, not on the neck, but this area right here, they set a little high for when I do my double thumb stuff. So he made this is actually detachable, and they sell these individually too.
Nice.
We put this under here, so it really, my thumb doesn't go too low. It's more the distance of like a jazz bass.
So you don't feel like you're fucking cliff diving between the space of where you're
exactly. Once we got this all done, he said, well, we should do some promotional videos for this. And I said, well, that sounds great. Well, I'm a big, if you haven't figured out by looking around here, I'm a huge superhero and Star Wars and kind of geek, I guess you could say, and as well as being a fashion pig.
Oink, oink.
Yeah, that's right. We said, well, as opposed to just doing the normal, like, sit there in a chair and, show all of the things, and we made this whole film that was called Looking for the Bass Maker, and it was filmed where they filmed like the Chronicles of Narnia. It was filmed in Christchurch, New Zealand. And the whole gist of the thing, and you can find it online, you just look up Stonefield or FREEKBASS, Looking for the Bass Maker. It's this little 3-minute film that the guy that directed a bunch of Nirvana and Depeche Mode videos actually filmed it. The whole thing is me going through the countryside trying to find the ultimate bass in New Zealand. You were talking a little bit before about stylistically taking all different styles and kind of incorporating into your own thing. As much as I was into Bootsy and Larry Graham and players like that too as well, at the same time what I would do is I would play along with the James Brown records, obviously learn the bass lines first, and on guitar I'd learn all the guitar riffs too. I'm like, I wonder what that would sound like on bass, playing the guitar riffs on bass. So I started messing with this little double thumb kind of technique thing and started inventing, kind of incorporating both bass lines. So you might be playing like, and then more like the rhythm guitar. Time when I did the sort of kind of messing with a double thumb technique, I know a lot of guys do that now, like Victor Wooten and people like that. I kind of came across it almost a different kind of way. I was playing kind of more in like a heavier kind of like groove funk band, and I was like certain songs almost kind of needed like a pick kind of sound to it, more like the pick thing. First off, I would lose them all the time. I'm such a space cadet. This blonde hair kicks in too much, so I was like, I can't find those anywhere. Well, I didn't like having to be like relegated just having that on my hand all the time, so I started kind of mimicking it with my thumb. As I got that technique and I started getting better at it, I actually stopped doing it for a while because I was at that age, I'd see people playing on TV or YouTube or whatever, and I'd be like, that's not proper technique to do that. You don't see guys doing that, or guys or girls doing that. And it almost kind of stifled me for a while, and a couple years later I was like, that technique's pretty cool. Maybe I shouldn't like worry about what necessarily what everybody else is doing and just kind of make it my own and own it.
I noticed that you really like using filters as well. What filters do you like to use? Is there any particular brand, the thing that turns your crank?
The one I use a lot, and the one I'm using right now, and I love for recording, is the MXR bass envelope filter.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's no frills. It's just real simple, real tiny fit, especially for fly gigs. If you have to do a fly gig, you can shove it in your bag, and it always sounds perfect. Doesn't, a lot of filters you got to be careful with bass because they have a tendency to pull a lot of your bottom end away from it. The MXR is still right, nice and full and chunky. The Electro Harmon X Qtron Plus, I use it. That's actually the one on my pedal board. I love that one. Same reason. It still keeps it real nice and full too as well. You don't lose your bottom end as well. The Qtron Plus is the closest I found to sounding like the original Mutron from back in the day.
Some may conform to the norm of the time. was flying the coop, stepping out of line.
What about other pedals? Are you into like any kind of overdrives, distortions, delays?
I use the Digitech whammy pedal a lot for my octaves.
I
Both
love
for
that
the
pedal.
down and the up. For my distortion sound, the Boss Metal Zone is great because it's got the multi-band EQ on it. So with that, you have the additional low end and low mids and stuff. So I jack those up real high so you don't lose those two as well. And then I'm sure, as you know, I'm never using just one pedal by itself. I'm using them as a combination. Like, you know, when I use the Metal Zone, I also use the whammy pedal with either the low or the high on there to make it even meatier too as well. As you know, and all your viewers know, like, that day when you go to do your, you know, set your pedal, I mean, block everything out of your schedule, you know, because you're going to be playing Tetris for at least a couple hours, feeling what feels the most comfortable.
You know, when you go in this pedal board tantrum like you're talking about, I want to see if this happens to you. After you've been working on it, right, and you tried 1,000 fucking possibilities, and then you have to come back and check it the next day, and you're totally burnt, and you possibly have pedal back because you've been fucking leaning over, trying all kinds of shit. Do you get up sometimes in the middle of the night and then you quickly step into your studio, turn on the light and look at the pedal board and then go back to sleep?
Yeah. And the other thing that's wild about it is, like, you get really good at troubleshooting live too, because, you know, when you have that many wires going and something goes crazy on stage, there's so many different, you know, elements, and the pedal board's always usually one of the culprits of that whole thing, you know?
So I'm telling you, sometimes I watch movies here in the studio with my chick, and then all of a sudden I kind of turn around in the middle of the movie and I quickly look at my pedal setup behind me, and then she looks at me and she says, "Are you looking at your pedal board?" I said, yeah, I just needed to have a quick glance.
Oh, yeah. The thing is that, and this is what's so great about playing bass overall, getting back to kind of the beginning of our conversation, you and I, we could have 10 bass players in the room, all the same level, all been playing the same amount of time. We could all play the exact same bass lines with the exact same pedals, the exact same notes, and they're all going to sound different.
I want to ask you something about your creation process. You come across like a one-man machine, and you're also very interactive, and you're also involved in the whole process. You know, there's the clothes, the multimedia, fucking social media, all that stuff that is going on. How do you go through your days executing your sonic visual visions? You know what I mean?
That's a good question. I mean, I have to give a big part of it to my manager, which is Angie Wilson, who she actually does a lot. She's a clothing designer too as well. She's got a very, very visual eye too with me. The visual and also the multimedia thing I've always been fascinated by it. It's all one part of the same thing. It's all part of the same muse too as well. Each day when we're thinking of a song or a look or whatever, the song will dictate that, or the look will dictate the song too as well.
What we're talking about here is it still takes a certain amount of personal desire, drive, and organization. We both know lots of musicians, people with potential, people that are actually great and get nothing done. There's a certain kind of seed and approach that it takes to take yourself seriously enough and to not take yourself so serious that people say, what the fuck is this? And to be able to carry it off, pull it off, and do it every day.
I remember hearing a quote from Wayne Coyne from the Flaming Lips, and he said, so many people, like in the music industry, in the entertainment industry, say, wouldn't it be cool if we did this in a show and had this great elaborate idea? Or wouldn't it be cool if we did this in an idea? So many people have these great ideas, but they don't do those great ideas. And he's like, I'm going to be one of those guys that actually does this. Not to sound too, cliche, but it's really just taking that first step forward and doing it. Your mind will want to try to rationalize with you, like, oh, but if you do that, that's going to be such a pain in the butt. And you got to do, and it'll start trying to talk you out of it, And it's the hardest thing is just making that first step and just doing it too as well, because life's too short, man. Live it every day like it's fullest. And again, I know cliche, but it's so true. And let's enjoy it and make it as entertaining as it can be for yourself and for everybody.
Oh, fuck yeah. You either suffer now or you suffer later. And suffering later is a lot worse than suffering now when you're younger to be able to take the beating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thanks for basing out with us here on BassMusicianMagazine.com.